Okay, mind the bad hair and the lack of makeup. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about writing. I've been writing since I was a kid. I used to keep notebooks when I was small. I would write these silly detective stories. He was a gentleman detective, and I think I must have had 3 or 4 adventures he had been on. But I always liked the idea of writing mystery novels because you had to write them backwards, which I thought was fascinating when I was a kid. This was probably back when I was like 7 or 8. I spent a lot of time just writing all sorts of things. I had no concept of music, but I liked writing song lyrics. I wrote a song about a treehouse once. And then when I was in the 8th grade, I had a great English teacher, Mrs. Lowe, who was very young. She's probably younger than I am now, actually. She had us do a descriptive writing exercise where I wrote about a person that woke up in a field and couldn't remember who they were or why they were there, which I thought was like the best way to write something descriptive when I was 12. What better way to use all your senses than to throw you into the middle of a field and have you just try to figure out where you were? After I wrote that, she invited me to go to the Young Writers Conference, which was very cool because there was a gentleman by the name of Sigmund Bauer who used to write, well, I guess middle grade fiction. If I remember correctly, most of it was mysteries, and I couldn't get enough of them, and it was like a dream come true for me to be able to hang out with this guy. It's a very powerful thing for a 12-year-old, so it ended up making me very confident in my abilities, which did not serve me well in the 9th grade. I had this horrible English teacher, Mrs. Bachowski, which is an unfortunate last name, and you can almost guess what we called her. And she lived up to it, and she picked on me. I was a bit of an overachiever in the class. I waited all year for the poetry assignment, and when it finally came around, I ended up writing, I think, like 3 more poems than I had to. But I was just excited, and I wanted to put something out there. And I turned it in, and she gave me 60%, which was technically passing, but was not the grade that I should have received. And when you're 13, you're not going to fight that because she's a grown-up. I would fight it now. But 13-year-old me, instead of trying to fight, just became defeated. And that was when I stopped writing. I hope she's out there somewhere suffering horribly. It wasn't until much later in life that I started back up again. And it sucked too because, it was a lot of wasted years that I could have been honing my craft. And it was when I was 24 that I decided I wanted to start again, but wasn't exactly sure where to start. So I decided to do NaNoWriMo. I read Chris Batty's book first, and then I did like a trial run NaNoWriMo in March just to see if I could accomplish it. And that was when I finished writing my first manuscript, which was horrible. It was chick lit, lesbian chick lit. And then we ended up moving. We moved to Madison, and my year was pretty jam-packed full of working and things like that, but I decided to give NaNoWriMo a go in November and failed. Got maybe 10,000 words in, writing a post-apocalyptic piece that actually, there's a movie coming out this spring that looks very similar to the idea that I had, which was kind of an anti-Twilight where a girl falls in love with a zombie instead of a vampire. My next book was not until I got into school. College kind of kicked my ass because I started thinking really seriously about maybe going to school for creative writing. And then I started taking as many creative writing courses as possible. The summer before last, I tried Camp NaNoWriMo for the first year that it was happening, and in the month of July, I wrote my second complete novel, which was a steampunk fantasy bodice ripper, and ended up being a lot more difficult to write than I would have given the romance authors credit for. There are only so many ways you could say penis, so that was a very difficult book to write, but I finished it, and it was horrible at the end. It's probably the worst thing I've ever written, so that went in a drawer also. I've been lucky. I've had a lot of really amazing instructors who have been very supportive. all of my writing instructors have said that they would be more than willing to give me a letter of recommendation. One of them told me that it would be a shame if I didn't pursue it because I had an aptitude for it, which is nice after working in shitty jobs your whole life, because those people can bring you down and make you feel like you're not worth a whole lot of anything. And having people reinforce that you're good at what it is that you love to do is amazing. Of writing in general. I know it's not for everyone, and that's good, because if it were, I would have way more competition than I do. I don't know that I want to go the MFA and creative writing route yet. I still have some things to figure out for that, because I honestly really like to be a librarian as well. I work at a library right now, and it's probably the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. But who knows? I still have a couple of years before I'm finished my undergrad, so I may be totally on a different path after taking more creative writing workshops and more lit classes and stuff like that. But for the time being, the goal is to become some kind of awesome writer who is a librarian in my spare time. There are only so many synonyms for vagina.